Chris, good to see you. Thanks for jumping on the call. I dropped a 15-minute meeting on your calendar. It's not about the project. I just wanted to touch base and ask you a quick question. We've got a prospect in the pipeline. We're talking about a project kind of there in your industry. It's very similar to what we've been working on. And I was wondering if you'd be willing to, if I could give you their or give them your name and email to as a reference, and maybe they, book a time just to ask you questions and stuff. It's a big project, so people kind of like to have those references. I'm not going to dictate what you say. You can be honest with them and so on, but just wanted to see if you would be willing to potentially give up a little time for that if they're interested.
Yeah, I think so. Which project were we? Just remind me, like which software we were working
It
on
yeah,
here.
it's the whole implementation project. Specifically on the operation side that we're wrapping up the implementation on here is what they're looking at. It's not the sales side of things, so it's more like
Okay.
our operations project.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. Happy to uh happy to um am I the best am I the right person to be talking?
I think so. I mean, like the reason I thought of you is because like you've been super engaged, and I think we've worked really well together on this project. Overall the smooth times and the bumpy times, but you kind of have a pretty good perspective on what the working relationship is has been like.
Okay. Yeah. No, yeah, now that you're reminding me, like it was a few weeks ago that we started talking about, wrapping up and stuff. So now I'm with you now. Feels like a lot has happened since then, but now I
Sure.
think we're aligned.
Yeah, and holiday and everything, so totally understandable. All right, cool. I'll do I'll just do a shared email intro and whatever works for you. You don't have to spend a lot of time, and if don't need to chase them or anything. If they want to um, if they want to set up some time to talk, then that's fine.
Schedule it.
Okay, great. Thanks. I'll let you
So
get the rest of your day back.
help me. Is that a good version or a bad version of what we're about to talk about today?
That, well, I think it was a middle of the road version of the bad version of what we are going to talk about today. Client references are particularly in RFPs, competitive bid processes, that kind of thing. We've all been asked for them at some point. Um, I think you and I both, excuse me, share an affection for the work of Blair Enns and Win Without Pitching, and some of the stuff that David Baker, his work on expertise, talk about how those things should be handled. Essentially, they are a prospect trying to fill in trust gaps, if you're lucky, and if not, they're just punching a checklist uh, that says get 3 client testimonials. Um, the thing about, I say it's a middle of the road version of the bad version of this is because, that's usually, uh, uh, that's the worst that you want a client testimonial or client reference request to go. Hopefully, you can, if you need them, have a better setup, a better time to ask, better framing, a better playbook for doing it. Um, the what the good version of this looks like is what we want to help organizations accomplish with the value path in the champion stage that we are talking about today, which is different from how we use champion internally in a sales process often, or what people usually mean, which is like, oh, it's champion is somebody that has filled our referral form one time, or has tweeted about us or something, but rather somebody who's kind of been transformed by the work that we have done with them or for them, and become a raving fan of you, of the company, or of the product, but that there's different ways to phrase this, but I would say has taken on some form of ownership of the you might use like affinity or identity language here, but the the perspective or the framework or the approach that your business, product, company, service uses, they have incorporated into their approach going forward, right? This isn't, oh, I learned how to use a new tool. This is, we approach things differently. And that is an advantage. People should be approaching this differently. My company should be approaching this differently. The industry should be approaching this differently based on what I have seen from working with this tool, company, agency, etc.
Yeah. Um, and so I'm thinking of the moments where it's like the only other stage, like after customer, as you open up HubSpot for the first time. I think it might be evangelist,
Yes.
something like that, right? And I want to differentiate a little bit, especially based on the example that we just went through, right? Because HubSpot, I think, has done a magnificent job of creating lots of fans and uh, even fans of the methodology, where it's like, how dare you talk about outbound right now? Like inbound, ride or die. Like
Right.
it's right. But then if you were to ask those people how HubSpot works, like in a moment like that, where it's the usual reason, like, and I'm just getting better at saying, especially with all this AI transformation stuff, like, nope, nobody's done this before. There's nobody like you. There's no like use cases we can point to, right? Because when somebody asks for a another like existing customer, right? Have you done this for anybody else? Like in response to those questions, like what I was just thinking about is the moments where it's like you're on a referral for a job application
Right.
and uh, you're only supposed to say like yes or no,
Mm-hmm.
like to every question. Like, yep, they
Mm-hmm.
worked here. Yep, that was how good were they? You know, um, like if you don't have the relationship, and I say, yeah, I'll talk to that customer. I don't even know if it's impacted us yet. Like all the questions that other prospect wants answered, whether the person is a fan or not, and knows how it's impacted their business and like can
Yes.
like what that other person doesn't want is yeah, yeah, they did a good job. Seemed to go like well. We didn't run into any issues. It finished on time, although that might be really uh,
Subjective at best.
right. Also really rare to hear if you don't
Yes.
put that in their mouth. But like if you like, because you can't script it, like that's not going to work well.
Right.
But also they have to be able to speak to your value without you there. Like,
Right.
and if you haven't again, that's why the build is like knowing that these stages exist, so value creator, adopter, advocate especially, um, it just changes what you can uh, what you can facilitate, what you can have control over leading up to this point to actually make it really easy for somebody who normally would not show up as a fan, but you can unlock that moment of they know something that the other person doesn't, and
Right.
they can't wait to share it with that person,
Right.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. And, like um, I opened with like, the final form of this is the, the person who's a champion has been transformed, right? Like their entire mindset has shifted, or they, they went from, I didn't know that the problem that you helped me solve could even be solved at the beginning of my journey. I didn't have a name for it, and now I do, and it's changed my world. That's we all aspire to that. Hopefully, not every business has that opportunity with a majority or even minority of their customers, but that raving fan, uh, uh, or I say we can make that goal a little more achievable by saying there are lots of facets of that relationship that people can be a raving fan of, right? Like, and figuring out what the right facet is for the combination of your business and your customers and an individual customer in your business um, is one of the fun and interesting challenges of understanding who your customers are to enable this, right? Like some people, some businesses don't realize that their value prop is not something that they name, right? And you only do that by uh, doing some actual work to understand your customers, right? Like the um, sometimes the product is what the customer is a raving fan of. Sometimes it's the brand. Sometimes it's the way that you approach the work or the accountability that you offer. Sometimes it's your expertise. Sometimes it's your independence. All of those things uh, are good examples of like the actual value that somebody might say like, oh, this is why I love this product or service or business, right? And figuring out what the common set of those are to enable your success or service or fulfillment teams to look for those opportunities, to make sure they are doubling down on creating those opportunities with customers, and then equipping customers to like walk through those open doors. That's the name of the game for the champion stage.
Yeah. And like the part I want to and that we've kind of named throughout the series is like you have more control over most of this, like over the enablement and facilitation than you think you do, because usually the reason that the other human is not progressing or not feeling how you think they should or whatever, it's because they're not getting some sort of resource from you that's helping them, feel that way.
Right.
And when it talks about, I think in like 2018, I started, like, I put down a quick outline for a book, like the 1,000-person marketing department, right? Like, because you are so good at helping your customers talk about you and share stuff about you. And in the world where it's like, oh, I don't know how I can be like, what is omni-channel? Seems important. I guess we got to try and resource it. Like, who's going to do that on the team? It's like you just start to look at this other side and you've built this group of humans and organizations that trust you, that have great relationships, that say on calls, man, I don't know what I would do without you guys. and you're not turning that into any marketing leverage at all. And it's just sitting there. And it's like back to the always thinking net new and creation of new things. Meanwhile, there's so much of value over there. And the little thing of just being able to know, um, like in this case, based on their level, the kinds of things that they might care and the way that they want to share it, right? Like the ability to just give a few sentences or say, hey, um, we just posted this thing on LinkedIn. I thought you might have a take. Like, there's just ways to enable others. Uh, it does require understanding where they're at in their journey and what they care about and what they value, right? Like we talked about the whole series, but when you've
Yeah.
done the work, it is like the assumption is usually, oh, that would be, I don't know if they're willing, to do that for us. And instead, it's like they just don't know how. It's not top of mind. But if you put the thing in front of them, hey, like they will do it in a second and they might give you more ideas about how they might be willing to do it every week or just all these things. And that's, again, like overall, my mission, like for like the last 5 years or so, is like there's so much expertise and value. It's just sitting unrealized. And how can we help each other? And in this case, our champions just share that expertise. That's almost always the limiting factor here.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. And as you and I have covered at length, uh, I guess I'm going to go publicly on record here in this case of like being not a huge everyone who to everyone who I've talked about this with or at with for hours. Welcome. I'm not a huge fan of story brand, um, but the one of the perspectives kind of buried in there that is correct is businesses make this about themselves and not about the customer, right? Like everyone experiences this in big and small ways. Like hey, how do you like our app pop up? And if you say, it's great, then it says, leave a 5-star review. Here's a direct link. And if you say like, meh, it's fine, whatever, I don't care. Then they ask for like, what can we do to be better? It's like, bro, you interrupted me. I don't have time to like write a paragraph for you about this. I use this app once a month. Stop hassling me. All the way up to like, yeah, like write a testimonial, any of that kind of stuff where we put the onus on them at the point that we think it's valuable for us, right? Versus making it about the audience. Like one of the facets of this champion stage in the value path, which is that we aren't saying, oh, they're going to help us close more deals. They're the internal champion, or they're just somebody in the evangelist stage in HubSpot, which I'd love to talk about it, at some point. But that can we do this in a way where even this exchange of value is still an exchange and not just an extraction, right? Like the um, on our slides, right? Like talking about for and somebody that we have equipped with a new capacity, right? Um, can we help them? We're helping them get better, do better. How can we help them broadcast that or publish it, right? Like even the basics of like a certification, right? Or something like that. Hey, here's the social media graphic with your name and image on it that says like you are now certified in the whatever product or something, versus a generic LinkedIn announcement, right? Something like that where the it's transient, it's low effort, but it's a little bit of recognition from you to the customer, and it's an opportunity for the customer to decide, like, well, I don't like that kind of thing, I'm not going to post it, or they post it, it's recognition, and they get way more value out of that than you do. Like, sure, you'll be marketing department of 1,000 if a bunch of people post that, but it's one fleeting impression that delivers more value to the person doing the post than it does to the company, um, on an atomic basis for each one of those posts. Um, that in that that's how you invest in champions, things like that, without making it extractive, making it about you, so that, you know, if you can bring somebody all the way to like on the cusp of champion, and then not communicate like, okay, now the only thing that like really matters to us from here is whether you actually bring in additional referrals or whatever, versus like, no, we're just going to continue to invest in this because we think it's important and we believe in it.
Yeah. But how many followers do you have?
Right.
How many
Yeah.
views do you have on
Yeah.
your YouTube videos?
How many impressions or comments did that get? 4, you know, like it's not going
Um,
to get very far. In each individual one, right?
yeah.
But
And
none of those are a standalone strategy, right? Is
right.
the important aspect.
And I think that's where like the whole perspective here, it gets unimaginably easier than you would expect when you understand the journey that, the other person is taking with or without you. And this whole mindset of what's in it for me, and feeling like we need to answer that question before we even ask anything of the other person. And I could be biased because I travel in this ecosystem, but there's been a large number of people that I've run into where helping them help other people is enough, or often like better than any kind of monetary thing, like any kind of usual transactional elements. And that's often, and when you can unlock that, there's only certain ways, like it's hard to do it the wrong way, in my opinion, right? Because it's so hard to be transactional and serve. Man, it'd be awesome if I could, wow, we could really solve something here. And I just talked to this person the other day and I think it would help them. So yeah, do you have anything like something I could share with them, or maybe we could set up a call? And like, it's just a different approach, that because most folks, and it's just starting to come up with like around the concept of AI, transformation right now, which is at the heart of a lot of what we do here. The unlock of not having to do it yourself, like for all parties here, it's just there is so much potential energy stored up.
Yeah.
But since usually everything leading up to this point, if you do try to get on my calendar, I'm like, okay, another one of these. We
Right.
haven't talked about it up to now, but now all of a sudden I need to be your best friend and you've got another customer to sell to.
Right.
So yeah, because
the pitch is tomorrow.
Right. And you didn't hurt me in the process. So I guess, like, we can have the call and talk about it. And I'm happy to, put a smile on my face and say, yeah, Josh did what he was supposed to do. It's worked well. Like, it's just the bare minimum that we shoot for so often, because we need to check a box, because the other process requires 3 referrals. It's just all these requirements built in, where if you can just kind of think above, like, referrals just happen. You will always have 3 referrals, and you will see the name all over LinkedIn, so they won't even ask you
Right.
for referrals, because it's so obvious that you your value becomes so obvious that like people are, I want a part of that. I want to
Right.
feel that value myself. And if I can help others feel that value, like even better, right?
Yeah, for sure. And the one of the things that I have noticed over the years, and that still needs to be um, a lesson that I remind myself of every week. Or I mean, maybe not every week, but I did again last week, which is that this could be a me thing, is that um, pulling up a level and having the meta conversation is kind of the thing that like really unlocks this in service businesses or in I don't want to say relational businesses maybe because that is confusing, but in high touch businesses, right? Like uh, the 5-star review economy that we live in now, where 5 stars is okay and everything else is garbage, um, has turned that transactional. And the way that you equip folks is to pull back and say like, okay, we just finished this. Like, tell me how you think it went. Like, if you can, in a one-on-one conversation. Like, no, really tell me like, what did we mess up? Where did we do well? Where did we miss the target of where we landed with this? And was that because we didn't have realistic expectations, or we simply didn't know it was possible, or was it because something else? We changed our minds, we ran out of budget, we ran out of time, we had to move the goalpost, or whatever. Um, and that earnest conversation, honest conversation, unlocks a level of the relationship that makes some of these things okay, and is how you feed into like, okay, here's the champion language that we have out of this relationship, and based on that, you can actually say back to them like, okay, here's what I heard, right? And sometimes that's all learnings, no champion, and sometimes at the other end of the spectrum, it's all champion, but usually it's somewhere between there. And um, customers, clients are generally too busy, have too much on their plate to do anything but answer, to your point, yes, no questions when somebody asks. Were they good communicators? Yes. Did they finish the work on time? Yeah, with an asterisk, right? Like, would you hire them again? Yeah, yeah. Um, but just like with everything else about marketing and sales, is if you can listen to them and then say back, right? Like, here's what it sounds like didn't go great about this. Here's what it sounds like went great. That here's what it sounds like went great is champion language that if you have done nothing else and you don't take it any further, you have, just by saying it back to them, helped them frame that whole process and engagement. And you would be surprised how many times you have to hear that, not many, when a similar structured question comes up in the future, that people have access to that same language in their mind. It's like a little rehearsal. It's crazy how well it works. So
Yeah.
like that, doesn't have to be transactional. It can be purely within the framing of like, look, I want to know how this went, right? And then, you know, you want to keep investing and reusing that in the future.
Yeah. We spend so much time on stuff like this before the close of like,
Yes.
get them saying yes, get them nodding their head. Like, it's like, it's just a whole, um, like a practice run, basically. Um, because it is easier when you've done the thing before to do it again. But the difference there is like, if it's for us in closing versus for you and the value that you want. Um, and I've got some examples here of what works and what doesn't. And I think next week we'll focus on the green side over here. Because these red flags, like the usual approaches, right? The one that jumps out to me is like platform limitation, restricting champions to vendor specific communities instead of enabling a broader influence. Uh, like so much of this relates to the kinds of resources required to create those communities and those resources requiring measurement of how well that community is working.
Right.
And like, so, and a real example of this is HubSpot's transition over the past couple of years to be like almost exclusively reliant. And if you wanted product feedback to get back to the product team, you'd have to go to the community, to the HubSpot community to make a post. And even the product team, like that was like their only inflow of like feedback that was actionable, right? Even though everybody was like LinkedIn and Reddit, there was clear communities and people that want to help. And I remember going over there, like one of the only time I've submitted an ideas article, I was a couple years ago, and I tried to do it in the same way I would have, like on LinkedIn. It's like, all right, I'm gonna publish this article, and then I'll follow up, like with some comments with some other links, and I couldn't do it. Uh, I couldn't comment like inside of 24 hours because of how the system works and how like they're protecting it. I couldn't do it the same way that I could do it on social. So therefore I do not want to do it over there. Um, but they and like the loyalty programs and the point systems, like, right?
Yeah.
And what's been interesting is them shift, like, which everybody needs to shift. It's not that conversation's happening over somewhere else, like not on your own spaces. And it's on you to figure out how to enable and create value over in those spaces when you have a lot less control over the measurement and all these reasons for why you limited your community to happen in this specific place. But
Right.
what was cool is when the vision and the North Star of, in this case, the HubSpot community is growing better and enablement and just this philosophy that's different than a lot of other ecosystems. I knew that if I just showed up on LinkedIn and I was clearly like, you could point to all the evidence as this Chris is diehard HubSpot and he's an advocate. I didn't have to build any points, like, or any, like, I don't need a badge to prove that I am a HubSpot champion.
Right.
Right. It's obvious. And these two, like, it's so easy for businesses. And if you're not bought into creating and valuing champions in this way, you will create gamified systems that always are gamed to get the badges, to get the points, and surprise, you don't get the results that you were hoping for. And
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. I mean, that's, boy, we could spend the rest of the day talking about
Lots to
that.
unpack there.
But like these are, in like economic terms, we call this perverse incentives. There's a lot of things happening there, but it's where like the bigger picture is that every single one of those decisions makes sense, and then the outcome is not what you were actually trying to accomplish, right? Like, oh, if people are talking on Reddit and Twitter and TikTok and LinkedIn and Discord or whatever. How do we how do we aggregate all of that? And that's a serious challenge. And do we want to engage there, or do we want to try to steer it to a community that we know can be safe, right? And where we can get better data, upvotes, et cetera. And we don't have to have we create a ticket from a Reddit post about a feature to try to see if it's a duplicate of something in the product pipeline already. Like, all of those decisions totally make sense, and they just don't stack up to providing a lot of value, right? And the tricky thing about it is your champions are outliers. And a champion can be somebody who is like yourself, right? Or a lot of people in the community who are producing content about the platform, about the company, about the ecosystem every day, and are building audiences and having reach and, connecting people, and communicating all kinds of concepts out everywhere, like explaining things to people. Champions can also be people who, I would argue more like me, who take a specific, very, I'm a humble brag, deep use case, and say okay, here's all the problems or challenges or opportunities that we could address, right, in improving the system, and provide that feedback. Champions can also be, killer implementers who go from company to company, or firm to firm, implementing and pushing the envelope and doing new things in new ways in new places. And all of those champions are important. They don't generally all go to a community to upvote ideas, right? And even if they do, or might, the kinds of championing that those folks do simply isn't easily upvotable, right? Like a killer implementer who's pushing, you are this in some ways too, who's pushing the quoting tool is further than it's ever gone, that's not going to be upvoted in a product community of or the ideas community of oh, hey, here's a cool thing we could do to the product tool. If you're in the 1% top adopters, everybody below that, the top 5% are going to be oh yeah, that makes sense. And everybody below that's going to be that's crazy. I don't even know what to say about it. Right.
Yeah.
And so that math just never aligns. Right. So the equipping those champions requires you to think okay, what do these different champions need to be effective champions? What do they want? And then how do we enable that, again, by being relational and not extractive?
Right. Yeah. And it's hard for me not to keep on wanting to talk about risk, and how it gets in the way. Because when you said outliers, right? It's there's outsized value, outsized impact, probably outsized risk related to champions in general, in the way that we're talking about them. And how often is it that the outsized risk only exists if the trust wasn't there, or if you were trying to be transactional, and the moment that the transactionality is felt, now you have this champion that is not beholden to any contracts or anything, and can just start talking in a different way. And the ways that we try to control those things via owned communities, or NDAs, or restrictive language, or it's just one will beget the other, And in reality, the outsized impact and value will just far outweigh the usual perceived risk when you just show up for each other and you are aligned on values and um which again is so much easier to do when you've looked at the whole journey and you're not just showing up, man, I gotta close more deals. Let me see if I can get Oakes on the phone because I think this prospect is close to maybe if we work together and figure out the words, maybe we can deliver, maybe you can help me close this client,
Right.
Oakes. Like, oh, we don't like those calls
Yeah.
necessarily.
And like, what am
Right?
I going to do with the Starbucks gift card you send me for going out of my way to do that?
Yeah. Especially like we know how the game works and like how just disingenuous is it when it's like even like $100 gift cards. Like I just helped you sell like $1 million product.
Right.
Like, and I know because we have had a relationship, I know how much that's going to net you and the company. And it's like that's where like just take the compensation like off the table
Yeah.
because you're not willing to bring it to the level where it even matters, and you shouldn't be because I'm not working for you. And like it just changes the perspective in the way that it needs to be, because like when you think you have to have control, like the last thing on here, like community ownership, treating champion built communities as marketing assets,
Right.
right? Oh man, Oaks has built this space over here. How do we leverage, like he's got the audience that we're trying to talk to? What kind of ads can we run? What
Right.
kind of like sponsored posts? Like have you ever, oh my gosh, sponsored posts. Like do they ever land? Like it's really hard to get them to land
Yeah.
unless it's like unless they are a champion in the way that we are describing. And then it's like, yeah, if you've got a sponsor and you want to throw some money this way, I mean, I don't have to. Like, doesn't like I'm happy to post about it without it. But it'd be cool if we could develop something like more. It's like
Right.
helping each other, like
Yes.
constantly, just this constant understanding of the value being exchanged on either side. And so much of this um on the left side is like what's in it for us,
Yeah.
like that's
Like,
where it comes from.
yeah. The, uh, if we, this is not a law of nature, or we could drill down and find ways that what I'm about to say is not precise exactly, or that you couldn't solve this problem. But generally speaking, the red flags on the left and the green flags on the right, the major difference is that the left one has a high degree of control on the output and can be measured, and the green on the right has a high degree control over the input and is hard to measure. Right. And so that's why we often end up with these suboptimal situations.
Yep. uh and man, I feel like the same thing could be applied to like any AI application right now, which again is why we're here asking you to think about this a little bit differently. I look forward to next week thinking about these green flags in this world where, I mean, if you change the perspective, you'd be surprised on how you can start to understand the value, at least. I'm not going to go as far as say it's like measurable, because usually it's not measurable in the way that you want it to be, but it can be a lot more visible.
Yes.
That these things on the right side, AI is all about it, like making more of this possible, working with, champions in this way, uh, is it's on the table. It's like, and this is why I like to think about it. Like every human is capable of being in these 8 stages
Yes.
as it relates to your business, right? And it's up to your business and you on whether or not you want to develop any of the specific stages. And what we're trying to help you do is, like, you've been focused on developing the lead stage and the closed one stage, right? That's what businesses are built on and like measured in everybody involved in the process. And just think about like changing those words. Like, do you want more hand raisers or do you want more leads? Like, do you want more closed ones or do you want more value creators? Like, we'll be here next week
Yes.
to start to help you think about the value at the end of this. And this part 1 has been fun, man.
It has.
We'll see everybody next week. Thanks so much.
Bye bye.